Calling all beings. Calling all beings.
Can I get that? Amen. Welcome back to Calling All Beings, everybody. I'm your host, DJ, with the other host, man. We don't get to talk UFOs enough, but my man right down there, Money Nathan.
What's going on? How's everybody? DJ, that was like very like almost Gregorian chant. That was really good.
Was that good?
It was very good. Yeah.
Good. I've been working on my voice. So it's working, these vocal lessons.
Solid.
Our worlds collide with Calling All Beings and Calling All Beings True Crime Unsolved. We have called her into duty, called her into action. Boston Bia.
Hello, everyone. Good to be here today. Happy Sunday.
Hey, it is good to have you. We had two people fall out due to injury. Courtney had something going on with her daughter, and Deb was not feeling well, so we were able to get Boston Bia. And now we get to introduce a man who has been on a bunch of different shows and is just an author and a thought leader in the world of consciousness, dream loops, precognition, and maybe even UAPs. Maybe even he's going to talk UAPs. I hope so. So party people, put those hands together for Dr. Eric Wargo.
Thank you.
Oh.
Glad to be here.
Glad to have you, sir. And be quiet, applause, dude. All right, we got to get the board to calm down. Welcome, Dr. Wargo. It is an honor to speak with you. I guess we did get to speak on the phone a little bit, which was cool. And I've looked at some of your work, and wow, you are a fascinating guy. Courtney's like, I'm like, who do we want to invite on? She's like, Dr. Eric Wargo, gots to have him on. I said, okay, we're going to do the damn thing. So thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
And at this point, and this right here, so that's Nathan. Have you, I don't know if you've met, heard of.
I haven't. No.
Good to meet you.
Good to meet you too.
Yeah, if you've heard of, he is a co-host also, or co-host of Darren Exo-Academian, Point of Convergence. So if you know Darren, then he and Nathan are like two peas in a pod. They do a show together called Liminal Frames. And this is Boston Bia, like I said, from we do a true crime show as well that we started doing a little over a year ago, and covering primarily the Karen Reed case. And we branched off, done some other cases as well. And Bia is my co-host for that. So with that, Money Nathan. Yeah.
Hi.
She's got great smile. Money Nathan, take it away.
Yeah. So Eric, it's really great to have you on. I was introduced to your work through Jesse Michaels, that when you were on with him, and found that to be a truly fascinating conversation. I was wondering if you could, I know this is a little tricky because your subject of expertise here can be a little bit dense for some. I was wondering if you could explain a little bit about time loops, block universe, retrocausality, precognition, all these kind of big things. Give us, in a nutshell, what is your take on time and knowledge and precognition?
Just a tiny little question there.
Yeah, I mean, you should be able to sum this up in
just
30 seconds?
30 seconds. I'll give you 30 seconds, and then we can move on to the real meat.
Yes.
So for more than a decade, I've been studying precognition, which is, it's the ability to know or see or be influenced by future events or future experiences. And it's one of the classic ESP triumvirate of telepathy, clairvoyance, which is, remote viewing, and seeing the future, seeing across time. And it's kind of the most sexy of the three, in terms of just like how impossible it seems and how mind-blowing it is when you start to think about it. But it's actually the one for which there is the best evidence. And I've been sort of immersed, or I was immersed when I wrote my first book, Time Loops, in both the experimental evidence for precognition, but also the anecdotal evidence. I mean, I'm a big fan of anecdote. I don't think that that anything to do with, honestly, I think anything to do with human psychology is really hard to address purely scientifically. I mean, science is super important and it has a very important place. But whenever you're dealing with human beings who exist in a world of meaning, I mean, we're meaning makers. You're never able to capture that perfectly scientifically, and there are a lot of topics that you can't capture really at all scientifically, or at least in an experimental sense. Dreams are a classic example of this. I mean, people have tried to study dreams for decades, and it's just very, very hard to do that because they're so idiosyncratic, and the dream language, even leaving aside esoteric possibilities like precognition, even leaving that aside, just the dream language is so idiosyncratic that there's no way to create a controlled experiment to study how different people dream about the same events or dream. It's just very, very hard. And then, but then when you start to bring in paranormal possibilities, of course, scientists don't want to hear about that at all. So anyway, we're left with precognition. We have mountains of fascinating anecdotal evidence. I mean, from across history, across cultures, um, everywhere. And the internet is allowing people to share their experiences. Get on the Reddit precognition thread, and you'll see daily multiple examples of people having, amazing precognitive experiences and trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. I don't know if I can swear on your show, but what is going on? It happens, yeah. And people want to know what it means. And so I sort of found that there was this very rich kind of topic and a lot of demand for people who have these experiences routinely, or at least they have them once. And it's like, what does it mean? And how does it work? And so that's been the main subject of my writing over the past almost a decade now. Well, actually more than a decade. I have a blog, The Nightshirt, that I don't really contribute much to anymore, but I wrote about these topics for a long time on there before I wrote Time Loops. And then I wrote a book called Precognitive Dreamwork and the Long Self, which really focused in on the question of dreams, because I was getting so many questions from people when I would speak to audiences about time loops. They really wanted to know about their dreams. So I wrote a book focused in on that question of how dreams, I think, work and how precognition works in dreams and so on. And then I wrote a series of 2 books on precognition and the arts and precognition and creativity, because I think honestly that is, to me, even the more interesting domain. I mean, everybody has heard of precognitive dreams, and there's a lot written about it. There are a lot of books out there on precognitive dreams and dream premonitions and so on, but not many people have really focused in on the question of the role this plays in creativity, because I mean, if people are accessing something like the dream world when they're being creative, and if the dream world is precognitive, then that plays a role in creativity. And I think it plays a really important one. So that's been sort of the main focus of my work. Although I did write a little book earlier this year, at the beginning of the year, called Becoming Time-Faring, where I sort of depart from the precognition question a little bit and talk in more general terms about time travel, how time travel may work, what can we expect in the future in terms of time travel. And I even have a little chapter in there where I talk a bit about the UFO phenomenon. Sorry, I hate the term UAP.
Yeah, the UFO phenomenon here. So yeah, feel free to call it that.
Okay.
Maybe quickly, could you explain or talk a little bit about the difference that sort of how the classical scientific approach deals with the issue of precognition versus your model of that. Because and I'm going to oversimplify this because I think this is how I would answer this question. But it seems like classical science basically writes off precognition as just coincidence, right? Basically, like we're really good meaning making creatures, and we string together these experiences, and we just happen to think that they predicted the future when it's just association. So what's the difference between that perspective that I think many of us in the world probably have heard? We've grown up, if we studied science at all, that's kind of the general perspective on a lot of these paranormal woo-woo topics. How would you contrast that with the way you look at that?
Well, yeah, that's the big question. Are these experiences, can they be explained away as mere coincidence and what's called the file drawer? I'm sorry, what's called the law of large numbers. This is a statistician will tell you that amazing coincidences happen as part of our lives, and we all experience amazing coincidences just by chance sometimes. And so when you take that amazing coincidence and say, oh my God, this incredible thing happened, it's impossible, and assume that there was some sort of paranormal causality going on, you may just be mistaking, you may just be bad at statistics. We're all bad at statistics, runs the refrain of statisticians. Okay. And it's true, and it's absolutely
it's true. Yeah.
I think that's a very important, it's important never to forget that argument.
Yeah.
Okay. And I spent a lot of real estate in my first book, Time Loops, addressing that argument, and it's totally important, and it's true. But it also, using that argument to dismiss precognition presumes that precognition is rare. The law of large numbers assumes that the large number is in the denominator of the fraction, not the numerator of the fraction.
Right.
But what you can show very readily is that precognition is incredibly common, and it obeys certain principle. There's such consistency to precognitive experiences across people, across cultures, across time. It's very particular, and these experiences are beyond chance. I mean, you can't explain these things away with the law of large numbers. And one of the things that I try to get people to do is check for yourself by doing what I call precognitive dream work, which is, and this is just sort of an elaboration of a method that was first written about by a pioneer aviation engineer about a century ago named J.W. Dunn, who was a precognitive dreamer, and he wanted to get to the bottom of what was going on with his dreams. And so he approached it sort of with an engineer's mindset, and tried to really think scientifically about what was happening. And, the prevailing sort of explanations for paranormal dreams at the time, were mainly had to do with telepathy, and there were spiritualist ideas about communication with the afterlife and so on. But he was able to really tell that his dreams were keying in on significant kind of emotional slight upheavals in his own future, that he was dreaming of his own future experiences, and they often were things in the media. And guess what? And this is what anyone who starts to pay attention to their dreams the way he did, which is write all your dreams down and then go back to your dream records at the end of every day and sort of just reflect on, any similarities between your last few nights' dreams and things that happened to you in waking. And you'll start to find tons of examples of this when you start to really keep a systematic dream journal. And people find this again and again. Oh my God, I'm doing this all the time. This is really a very common phenomenon, not a rare phenomenon. We just don't notice it. And crucially, precognition is about our own experiences. They're about our own experiences in the future, our own learning experiences, our own engagement with the media very often. I mean, I dream about things on Twitter for the most part. It seems trivial, and it won't even necessarily be the most exciting thing or interesting thing on Twitter, but some random little picture that catches my eye, I'll realize, oh my God, I dreamed that last night, and I was in the scene and like interacting with all of the things in this picture, and it's something, it's fascinating, and it's fascinating because it tells us there's a lot that we really don't understand about, what do you want to say, the brain or the mind, whatever. I don't like the term consciousness. We could get into that, but there's a lot that we don't understand, and causality is not what we've been raised
Mm-hmm.
to think it is.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's an amazing, fascinating topic, and especially when you start to experience it in your own life. It's one thing to read other people's stories and go, well, that's amazing, but when you start to experience it yourself and start to experience it repeatedly, it's like, okay, this is it's a paradigm shift for all kinds of reasons.
Yeah.
And going back to the beginning of your answer, the first question, you talked about anecdotes are a form of evidence, and especially in totality and aggregate when there's a lot of people. And it made me think of this week we lost one of your colleagues from Idaho State, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, who's the premier, Bigfoot researcher, PhD. And other than the Patterson Gimlin film, and other than the footprints that they've casted, of which there, it's probably 1,000 now that are between Cliff Barrickman and Dr. Jeff Meldrum, it's a lot of anecdote. But when you really look at it and you look at the breadth and depth of individuals who have had anecdotal first-person sightings of a Bigfoot, would you go up to each one of them? We can line them all up and you can go, you're a liar, and you're a liar, and you're a liar, and you're a liar.
Exactly.
And you can just repeat that till we get through the BFRO database, through maybe the Bigfoot mapping website's database. And after you say you're a liar 20,000 times, and you realize the liar is you, because in a quarter of law, anecdotes are evidence, right?
Yeah,
they may
absolutely.
not be absolute proof, but they're evidence. So
that's a great example. And I'm so glad you brought up Jeff Meldrum, because I was so sad to learn of his passing. I was lucky, I didn't know him that well, but I did have lunch with him several years ago in Boulder, Colorado, and he was fascinating, and his evidence is really, really compelling. So I was like, really impressed with him, and I've always been really impressed with him. And I was like, really, that was horrible to read about his passing. So, but I'm glad you brought him up. And yeah, that's a great example. Like how I put myself in the mindset of like naturalists in the 19th century. If you want to, there had been all these reports of, big, hairy, man-like beings living in the forest in the Congo, and and
no
of course
way.
you can go, no, that
exist.
can't be.
They don't
But the
exist.
thing is, you're not, the only way you're gonna prove it is just like go into the Congo and bring one out and show people. And that's what I'm kind of doing, what I'm trying to do with dreams. I'm trying to just go in there, get one yourself, and you'll see what I'm talking about. That's I think the only way you're gonna start to convince people.
So. Well, I'm going to get, Deb has already put 2 questions. Let me get Bia's question in there. Then we're going to get Deb's, and then I'll get to my question. But go ahead, Bia, with what you had something.
I did. So it's so fascinating to hear you speak about dreams, because I believe that there are some that are called what are called special dreams. Those, and I've experienced them myself. Just very briefly, my mom about a year ago was intubated, and she was at the end of her life. I wasn't able to say goodbye or explain what was going on. She then passes, and the morning before her wake, I have a conversation with her that was as real can be. I was telling her that I was unsure about the choices I had made for her services, and she said, it's okay. And then she asked me, did I die? And that, when I tell you, I woke up with tears coming down my face, because that conversation that I was not able to have, I had just before her services. So my question is, do you believe, I know there's a book called Special Dream. Do you believe there's a difference between dreaming about certain topics or conversations when you've had them from people that have passed?
Um, that's sort of veering out of my area of expertise. So I don't, I don't want to give my opinion. I mean, yes, lots of people experience exactly what you're talking about. Um, and is it really a conversation with the afterlife or whatever? Maybe. I really, I couldn't tell you. But as far as the idea of special dreams, and this is something that I think there is, and I don't think it's really exactly what you're talking about, but I think there is a misconception about, certainly about precognitive dreams, and this has been uh, uh, expressed, by real authorities like Carl Jung and so on throughout history. But I think it's completely wrong, which is that the idea that some dream that has psychic content or whatever is going to feel special. It's going to be numinous, and and there are those dreams that feel special. But one thing that you find when you start to just record all your dreams, even though just the stupid random, ones that seem, oh, this can't be important, you find that those are just as likely to be precognitive as any other dream. But as far as what the kind of dream you're talking about, I mean, I
No,
can't
I
speak to that
understand.
exactly,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, that's, I mean, I've read, tons of people have recorded those kinds of dreams, and yeah, they're
It's amazing when
amazing.
you
Yeah,
experience it for sure.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that Deb doesn't fire me from the show. Eric, how has your work become relevant to your own experiences? Have you seen precog ripples in your own life?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've ever since I've become aware of the phenomenon and awakened to it, I, I've recorded hundreds of precognitive dreams. I've got binders, upstairs in my office full of 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 precognitive dreams. I'm discovering new ones in my old. I'm fortunate to have kept a very detailed electronic dream journal for a decade and a half by the time that I actually sort of started studying precognitive dreams. And so I actually had this like corpus of dreams that I could then go back to. And I've made a lot of discoveries in that, in that body of dreams. Dreams often target, you'll find that, a lot of precognitive dreams are sort of about minor things in the next few days or maybe a week or so. But you'll also find that dreams often target significant experiences exactly a year or exactly multiple years in the future. And it can span decades. And this is the most mind-blowing discovery when you start realizing that you were dreaming maybe in a completely different part of your life, different part of the world. You had a dream like maybe 2 decades ago about some big kind of experience that you're having today. And it's like, holy, I mean, it's
Yeah.
really, really incredible. And you go back to the dream journal and it's like, there it is. And it's like, it's really, really mind blowing to have these experiences. I mean, I just recently, I logged my longest distance recorded precognitive dream, 25 years to the day, 25 years to the day before this experience that's too
Happened?
complicated to go in. Right. I had a very explicit dream about it.
Wow.
And I was just blown away. But other precognitive dream workers I work with have the same experience. I mean, if you've been keeping, it's never too late to start keeping a dream journal, but start now because the more years of dreams you
I'm
build
gonna
up,
do it.
it's fascinating for all kinds of reasons. I mean, even leaving aside the psychic possibilities and so on. I mean, it's just such incredible
It's
insight into your own
revelatory. Yeah.
mind and creativity and so on. It's so fascinating. Yeah.
And that's why I think too, I also keep a log of all those, what I consider special dreams to me, because there's so much in the details. You remember
Yeah.
a conversation, and there's so much when you write it down of value if you look at it a
Mhm.
year from now, because there are
Absolutely.
details that you just don't
Mhm.
hold on to. And
Yeah.
when you wrote it, it's so raw. So
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. And I definitely recommend doing it as someone who does it myself. So.
Yeah.
I'm good.
And if you're any kind of artist or creative person in any medium, I mean, there's, oh my God, I mean, dreams are just so fertile for ideas.
For me, it's hairstyling is basically where I express my
That's a
artwork.
very Zen. That's a Zen hairstyle. It's nothing. It's the
It's
hair of
very
no hair.
Tibetan monk, yes.
Yeah.
So what I was going to ask you for the lay persons that are watching and in the chat, can you kind of just give what is a precog dream, so that they can sort of identify that in their own experience?
Yeah, well, a precognitive dream is a dream that is about a later experience, and you can never know that a dream is precognitive. Now, this is the this is the important kind of caveat to this, that you're not going to suddenly develop a superpower where you know what's going to happen the next day or whatever.
No?
That's not the way
Huh.
this works.
Okay.
Well, you can apply it. I mean, there are people who do the work of applying it sort of in a remote viewing style um, sense. And I can give you the names of some people who really do apply their dream precognition, but they're still, they're not getting rich on the stock market doing it. It's not that you can't, and I have heard stories, believe me, but generally speaking, you cannot know, even if you go with the assumption, which I do at this point, that all dreams may contain precognitive material. You can't know how a dream is precognitive until an event comes to pass. And because part of it is that dreams are not they're very rarely sort of video quality, just like closed circuit TV representations of a future event. They're distorted in various ways, and they're often mediated by personal associations and symbols. So it's not like immediately recognizable. And this is why we're not aware of precognitively dreaming, because uh, um, you will have a dream and you won't realize that you dreamed it. You'll have an experience and you won't realize that you dreamed about it, because you've forgotten the dream, never wrote it down, and even if you did write it down, like, you never went back and made the connection. And often the connection is not. If you go back and compare the events, or compare the dream and the event, you'll like, okay, I yes, there's something here, and then you start to decode it, and it's like, oh geez, it's all in the symbolism, or in the association. That's not true of all precognitive. Some precognitive dreams are just vivid video quality, dead on, but most of them are distorted to a degree. So I'm blanking on what the question was, but
So essentially, I just wanted you to let people know what to look out for, and what
oh
you
yeah,
said that was really revealed
right.
is don't look for, just record your dreams, and then you're going to be able to. That's going to cause you to be able to remember when that event
Yeah.
happens, which Dr. Eric just said happened 25 years later.
Mhm.
Something. So
Yeah.
that, I think that's the key. So
Yeah. Though, so I can give you the methodology. It's real simple. It's a three-step method,
okay.
and you can start tonight. You keep a dream journal by your bedside, or some people record their dreams, with a voice recorder.
Mhm.
I think it's easier to record things in writing, because it's easier to go back. It's easier to very quickly skim something rather than listen to a whole, like, recording of something. But whatever works for you. But anyway, record all your dreams in the morning. And by the way, just the act of setting like an intention with a dream journal means you'll start remembering your dreams, even if you're someone
Wow.
who generally doesn't remember your dreams. You'd like, just the first night you have a dream journal there, you'll wake up with a really vivid, cool dream. And so, it's that part's rewarding. Second step, and this departs a bit from what J.W. Dunn recommended back in 1927 when he wrote his book on the subject, An Experiment with Time. Take just a moment when you write your dreams down. Take a moment to free associate on them, and that's very simple. It just means, what's the first thing this reminds me of? What's the first thing this person in my dream reminds me of? What's the first thing this situation reminds me of? And it'll be something random and stupid or whatever. You're not going to decode the dream that way, but often it's in those free associations that you'll get the link to the later event. So write your dream down, free associate, and then set it aside. But then at the end of the day, before you go to bed, just take a minute go through the last few days dream records and just reflect on any similarities that you might see, and just keep doing that, and sooner or later you're going to start noticing that you've had possibly precognitive. Some of them are not like dead on certain, but like it's weird that I dreamed about this very specific thing, and then that specific thing appeared in my dream, but some will like just all kinds of elements from the dream will match sort of an experience during the day, and it's quite striking when that happens.
Money Nathan, take it away, brother. I like that. I think I know how to begin. So that's what we needed.
That's a really good step-by-step. Thank you. I wrote those, took some notes there because really fascinating. So I have a lot of questions that I wanted to ask, but I wonder if you could talk a little bit really quickly though. What's the difference between what I think you're talking about and someone who would say it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because I think you do make that distinction. Yes. So could you explain how you view that?
Yes, this is the thicket of of time loops and the whole subject, and I my first book is like hundreds of pages working through this issue, because you've hit the nail on the head. And it's another reason why skeptics are going to say, oh, well, you had a dream that matched later event, but you were just somehow influenced by that dream to create that situation. And to some extent, they're right, because, and this is what I mean by a time loop. In relativistic physics, okay, which allows time travel and allows time traveling information, okay, the universe is a big four-dimensional block, okay? You've got the 3 dimensions of space, but you've also got the dimension of time. And in a sense, future events have already happened in that block. And what happens now is actually retro-influencing what happened in the past, but in a way that doesn't change history, but that influences. So you've got these influences going both directions in time. So in a sense, all precognitive dreams can be seen as having an element of self-fulfilling prophecy, because in one way or another, you had that dream. In one way or another, it influenced your day, or it influenced your life, at least in the very fact of writing it down, if nothing else. Okay.
Like
So like the butterfly effect, it's a part of the sort of causal backstory of whatever event it was precognized. So in a sense, there is that element of self-fulfilling prophecy in any time loop. But there's a difference between having a dream that you bought a purple blazer on Etsy and going, oh, that's interesting, I'll get on Etsy and buy a purple blazer, and sure enough, and it fulfills your dream. It's like, okay, I mean, there's no reason that dream wasn't precognitive, but you also, a skeptic is not going to not going to take that as evidence for the phenomenon. So you see the distinction here. I mean, I guess there's a degree, there's a range or a spectrum of how self-fulfilling prophecy ish a time loop will be, and there's a one end of the spectrum where you really can't tease out how much of it is self-fulfilling prophecy from this issue of precognition, and those are not the best evidence for the phenomenon, versus the bulk of precognitive experiences are you can't explain them away that way.
Right.
Yeah, reasonably.
Yeah, right, exactly. It seems to me like an interesting experiment, and I could get very highly speculative here, so maybe I won't, but I will in a second.
Let's do it.
All right, I will in a second. So an experiment here is in the aggregate, right? We could potentially glean some information about the future. I mean, there is maybe a side topic here about kind of how we experience time in a linear fashion. Time doesn't maybe necessarily move in a linear way in a relativistic universe. But bear with me, but you could kind of collect all of the dreams from everyone and you could feed that through some sort of analysis. You could argue that the tech companies with algorithms in a way do this type of thing already, and they do predict from a marketing standpoint,
Right.
oh, you're going to want this kind of product because you're reaching this
Yeah.
certain age or whatever. You can see where this could be a pretty powerful tool if it is in fact real, which I agree with you. The case, the evidence, the anecdotes seem pretty strong to indicate that it is.
Mhm.
So thoughts on that idea that you could
Yeah.
perhaps harvest that information and make meaningful predictions
Right.
about the future.
Yeah. So, so there's two parts to the answer to that question. The first is that there's a, just to be clear, that there's a difference between prediction and precognition. Prediction is the inference of what's going to happen in the future based on past data. So that's what, that is what any kind of AI algorithm or internet algorithm or whatever, that's what that's doing. Whenever we talk about prediction, we're talking about that, which is doesn't have any actual connection to some future event that's sort of retrocausal. There's no causal connection or no information that's really reaching you in the present from the future going on in that. But yes, ever since people have become aware of precognition, they have dreamed of doing exactly what you're suggesting, which is, can we pool information from psychics, for instance, and dreamers or whatever, and get a heads up about disasters, for instance. And this is a man named John Barker, a psychiatrist named John Barker in the 1960s. He became really interested in this topic after there was a big coal disaster in Wales, and I'm blanking on the name of the town, but like over 100 children were killed when like a coal slurry, wiped out a school in this town in Wales. And he solicited information from people through a newspaper because he thought, people might have had a lot of premonitions of this. And sure enough, a lot of people reported premonitions, including some of the kids who had been killed in the school. Their parents reported that they had told them, one girl who was killed the night before said, I dreamed something black came over the school and smothered it. So he started getting sort of psychics together to sort of pool their uh their dreams and impressions and so on, and he created this thing called the Premonitions Bureau, which was to do exactly what you're imagining. Now, it's never worked. It's been tried again and again and again, and it's never worked because precognition is too imprecise, and even when multiple psychics kind of like, oh, we get the same kind of impression of a certain thing happening. In fact, his psychics predicted his early death very accurately. It's kind of like it kind of makes you scared above the whole topic because he his early demise was predicted by his psychics. But even if you had a clear signal of a future event, first of all, the event has to happen for there to be that signal. So it's not like you can prevent a disaster. Now, you may be able to take measures to mitigate the impact of the disaster or whatever. I mean, there's that, you have to work within that sort of time loop there. But still, what authorities in the world are going to take seriously, even like I have 5 psychics who all said that there's going to be a terrorist attack, at wherever. It's like authorities, they have limited resources, and they're not gonna take that kind of thing seriously by and large. So yeah, this has been the perpetual dream of of people when they first learn about the reality of precognition, either because they've had that experience themselves or they read the data, they think, gosh, we got to use this, and it's unclear whether that's feasible.
So I'm sorry, Nathan. Did you
No, I'm
want to
good.
tack on
Great,
to that?
thank you.
Okay. We have a bunch of questions that I've starred in the chat. In addition, let me ask you, I kind of alluded to this in my advert for this episode, is do you find any connection points from from the focus of your study, precognitive dreams and other things? Is that could it be the visitors, the phenomenon? Is there anything else? The telepathy, kids. Do you find a connection point to any other paranormality, if you will, using that in the broad sense?
Very possibly, very possibly. Like you mentioned the telepathy tapes stuff. One of the real problems with that series, and I'm hoping that this will be addressed in the film that they're making, is that they did not control for precognition, because there is an argument to be made, and I address this in Time Loops, that some, at least, of what gets called telepathy is really misrecognized precognition. An example that's been used is like you wake up with, or you have a dream that that your brother was in a car accident, and you call him up, or he calls you and says, "Oh, I was in a car accident," and you go, "Oh," and you assume that that was a telepathic link, okay? But the reality may be that you were simply precognizing that phone call, and that and often this happens. Often precognition happens between two people in a way that will make it look like telepathy. They'll think that there is a connection between their heads, when in fact they're both precognitively converging on a moment when they come together and share a story. And so, and I'm not saying it's always that, but when you don't try and tease out, what's sometimes called the signal line in remote viewing work, when you don't make an attempt to impose controls that would sort of narrow down what's happening, you can't, you run the risk of just making assumptions. And I think there's a lot of assumptions being made about the telepathy tapes stuff, because actually, if you look at the videos, I paid the $10 to look at look at the videos. In some cases, you can see feedback being given immediately after the kid gives their response, which makes it possible that they were precognizing the feedback. And most of the films cut off right after they make their response, so it's impossible to know what happened, in that subsequent time frame. So it's just really important to make, to impose controls on any kinds of experiment, and this is true of remote viewing too, because there's a big argument that some remote viewing, or all, could be, again, this misrecognized precognition, because a remote viewer will sometimes get feedback afterwards in some form, either as directly part of the experiment, or in the news. They'll remote view some event, and then they'll see a news story about it. Were they actually seeing across space, or were they seeing across time? This is an open question, and it's sort of hotly debated. And what I'm articulating is a very minority view at this point in the remote viewing community, but it's important to tease it out. And in fact, a lot of the original sort of SRI remote viewers are very kind of open to this possibility. And I think lately even Russell Targ has started talking about, how it may be precognition, not clairvoyance as it's often been understood. So these are just big open questions. Yeah. So yes, precognition potentially relates to other psychic phenomena, and its relationship to UFO stuff. I don't know. I think it plays a role, and you certainly, it's a very consistent feature of close encounter experiences and UFO encounter experiences. Generally, people will find that they precognized it. People will find that they're become precognitive afterwards, and why that is, I think that has to remain an open question. I mean, you can think that this is something from the UFOs or the visitors themselves, but it's also true that a UFO encounter is a significant life event, and people precognize significant life events, whether it's encountering UFO or falling in love or the death of a loved one. That all those kinds of events are surrounded by synchronicities, and often synchronicity is really precognition in disguise, I think. So yeah, I mean, it is a part. I think it's a part of what often gets called the phenomenon, which I think is several phenomena. It's certainly there. It certainly plays a role in a lot of these things. Definitely. Yeah.
I just want to say that Joe McMoneagle is still doing the end zone dance about finding that submarine
Yeah.
that appeared
Right.
to have been
Yeah.
Red
Right.
October was meant to be. He's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I see a
Yeah.
submarine and there's a sort of an aircraft carrier blocking it, and then when they move that out of the way, it's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, look at the
Yeah.
size of the submarine
Yeah.
the Russians have built. And
Mhm.
so I guess he and Robert Gates, he every time he sees Robert Gates, he replays to him the note that
Yeah.
Robert Gates wrote back to
Lucky
him.
guess. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, but no, I know what you mean. And actually, Julie, one of our chat moderators here, Jules of the Wood, she is a disciple of Dr. Simeon Hine, who also teaches remote viewing. Okay, so we got a bunch of questions here. We can get through them in sort of quick hitter fashion if you can. Debs says, have you studied reports of time alterations in NDEs?
Not extensively, no, but I think here again, this is what interests me. NDEs interest me when there's what's called a veridical component to it. And that is to say, while I was, I'm not that interested in, I mean, NDEs are fascinating, but from the standpoint of precognition, I'm not interested in, the planet that you were on for, X many weeks or whatever. But if on that planet you saw, this thing which you couldn't possibly have known about, and then you are revived and you learn that about that thing, it makes me wonder if that was, you were precognizing it in that state, in that, oxygen deprived state. That's I think an important, interesting question. But beyond that, no, I have not studied the NDE literature. I haven't had time. It's like one of those things I'd love to read more about, but just don't have the time.
This is why we should have brought James Iandoli on. He's had these NDEs. Anyway, so Jules says, did you find when people experience the anomalous, they are also more likely to have extra abilities in cognition? So those that are experiencers, are they more given to precognition?
Precognition. Yes, often. I mean, yeah, you'll find that, people that, and this is something that I think Gary Nolan and Kit Green have found with their work, is that these people who have these experiences are often very, on the high end of the psychic ability scale. On the other hand, they're often on the high end of the openness to experience scale in psychology, and on the high end of the imaginativeness continuum. There's a scale called
on
right.
fire. Yeah. Enlarged.
Yeah, like how do you separate these things out? I mean, I think it could, again you could make a reductive hypothesis that well, people who are just open to new experiences and are not blinkered by their cultural programming are more likely to notice UFOs and be open enough to the experience to actually register it consciously, and that those people are also the ones who have more precognitive experiences, and they notice those and so on. So is there a causal relationship? I don't know. I mean, that's maybe yes, maybe no. It goes back. Yeah, it's like we there are a lot of unanswered questions about all this stuff, and so that's why it's such an exciting field of future study and present study. People are a small group of people are actively studying it now, and hopefully more and more will get involved in the future.
Money Nathan, could you read this one, sir?
Sure. Yeah. So thanks, Deb, for this question. So would time matter at all if we did not age? Is time more of a concept than a reality?
That's an interesting question. Time is not, I wouldn't say time is a concept. I would say it's a reality. I think the interesting thing is that we're not able to process time very well. We think in terms of space. We sort of process the world spatially, and when we understand time, you'll note that we have to turn it into something spatial in order to really even talk about it. and register it. We don't for some reason our brain is not good at dealing with time and causal relationships. These are notoriously difficult for children, for instance, and even just regular causal relationships, let alone retro-causal relationships. But even just understanding time, we have to put it in terms of a spatial reference, like a clock face or a calendar, or whatever. It's very hard to experience time in its sort of directly, and Henri Bergson talked about duration and experiencing time in this sort of direct way. And certainly you can argue that some cultures may be better at grasping time and temporal relationships than ours. But I think I have a hunch it's kind of a basic human deficiency, cognitive deficiency, that we're just not good at thinking about time. And that's part of the reason this stuff surprises us, or the reason we don't believe it, because we just don't understand time very well.
But the thing is, I've said since very early when we were doing the show, it's hard to presume that you can define someone else's reality.
Right.
And aging is a part of that.
Mhm.
Because we age, it's part of being a human. So for someone to say, "Oh, you don't understand reality," it's like everybody has a different reality, and there
Yeah.
are also things that are in the sphere of our reality that we don't see or aren't aware of. But
Mhm.
I can't define Nathan's reality. I
Right.
can't define a person who's herding animals on the African plain, what their reality is, and say, you don't understand your reality. You don't understand
Right.
time.
Right.
Time is something that affects us as humans. Is it the same for perhaps another intelligence that's able to travel across great distances, and when they get back, perhaps those that they were associated with or familial with haven't aged and so forth, and yet time on Earth has passed 150 years. Who knows? But
Yeah.
it's hard to define others' realities. Could you read this one right here? Could you read this one, Bia, and then we'll go to Lovely's question next.
Did you watch the hearing on UAPs?
I caught parts of it. I caught parts of it, not the whole thing. It was pretty interesting, I thought.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of good anecdotal. We talked about
Yeah.
anecdotal evidence.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of it there from credible people. So
Yeah.
that just keeps adding to the stories of people that
Yeah.
would tell you, like Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, there's no such thing as UAPs. We do not have anything recorded that suggests that we've been
Yeah.
visited by an intelligence that we're not aware of. And it's like, and
Yeah.
I think they said, they're going to subpoena him to try to come there, Luna, which I think they should,
Yeah.
because I don't think he's been honest with the American people. Bia, would you read this one?
Very interesting. Could this be why and when we have deja vu?
So meaning,
Yeah. Right. A lot of people imagine that that's maybe why we have deja vu experiences, that we had a dream about this moment you're living through right now. We don't remember the dream because we don't remember most of our dreams, but we suddenly and we know that feels familiar. It's very possible. Unfortunately there's no way to prove that. But the one asterisk I would bring up is that it is possible to induce deja vu experiences artificially. The sense that a sense of familiarity is there's some circuit that will fire when something's familiar, and it's possible to fire that circuit artificially even when something isn't familiar, and have that feeling, oh, I've done this before. So the fact that that's possible suggests that, well, a deja vu could just be a brain misfire. It could be a brain fart of some kind.
Flatulation.
But
I'm just kidding.
yeah. Sorry.
Can I
Yeah.
ask a
Sorry.
I'm
follow-up
kidding.
to
I'm
that?
kidding. I'm kidding. I was trying to
Excuse
think
my
of a
French.
I was trying to think of a cute word for fart, and I was like, wait, flatulation. Good.
Can I ask a follow-up to that though? So
Sure.
how do you tie it back to a precognitive dreams, and us, maybe deja vu could be that we've already lived this lifetime in a different form. So how do you know that it's a precognitive dream versus that?
Oh, I'm saying we don't know. There's no way to know with deja vu, because kind of what defines deja vu is that you don't remember the experience, the previous experience, whatever that was. You don't know why it's familiar. It just feels familiar. So, if you could pin it to a precognitive dream, then well, no, then it's a case of dream precognition. It's not deja vu. But most people don't have nice binders full of all their dreams that they've had over the course of their life. And in fact, even when you record your dreams assiduously, you're just netting a tiny fraction of the dreams that you have in your life and in a given night. And we're dreaming for really the whole time we're asleep. Even it's not just REM sleep. We're having dreams even in the deeper sleep phases. And what even the best dream recorder is going to remember on waking is a tiny fraction of that, which is one of the arguments for why we shouldn't necessarily think of precognition as such a rare thing. I mean, if why it's possible we could really be precognizing everything in our life and we're not remembering it. We're just not supposed to remember it. It's like sort of the way we pre-metabolize our experience, and it maybe helps us prepare for things or whatever. And we don't need to know, we don't need to be conscious of precognition. So this gets back to the thing I mentioned earlier. I'm not really a big fan of the word consciousness, which everyone throws around these days,
Yes.
because I don't think it explains much. And in fact, precognition, it notoriously operates in that realm of the unconscious, of dreams and creativity and spontaneous voices and things like that, things that come from that feel like they come from some other realm. So it's not like our willful conscious awareness.
On the day that your body expires, your personal belief, where your spirit, that which you could, if we're going to use a religious context, you could call your spirit or your consciousness or whatever you want, whatever word you want to use. Where do you believe that goes? Where's yours going to go?
I don't know. I don't know. And I'd answer it differently every day. I don't know. I've gone through periods when I, was, very firmly convinced that in reincarnation. I've gone through periods where I'm, very materialist and think, no, death is the end. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't think precognition, a lot of people ask a similar question because they want precognition to be about like our next life or the afterlife. And who knows, maybe, I mean, there's no way to disprove that idea. So, I don't know. But it's funny that people in our culture are, we're very denying of death and mortality. We want to think in terms of, something that negates that mortality thing. We're so troubled by it. I think more so than other cultures, really, to be honest. And it's funny that I can give talks on precognitive dreams and the long self, and people assume that I'm talking about dreaming of their future life, like in the afterlife or in their next incarnation. And I'm going, no. You have a self, you have a biography that's going to continue for, hopefully some decades, and it's like you've got like a whole amazing life that you are having precognitive dreams about all the time. And I try to focus people on their life here and now. And that's why I think precognition really highlights is that sense of the biography, or what I call the long self, that biography. And so that's what interests me the most. But as far as my personal beliefs, you would get a different answer from me every day. So I'd rather not answer that.
That's fair. I want to ask Nathan the same question. Nathan, where do you think it's going to happen with your being, your spirit, once your body expires?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question. I definitely side more. I'm more persuaded. Let's put it this way: I'm more persuaded by, I kind of think, the idealist worldview, or view of reality, and I sort of lean more into the the anecdotal evidence from NDE, from past life experience, as a pointer toward that possibility. But I also echo what you're saying, Eric. I mean, there's just no way to prove or disprove that, so it ends up becoming a matter of belief in many respects, which I don't want to belittle belief, because beliefs guide kind of most of our daily actions. I mean,
Right.
it comes back to something that, you mentioned at the beginning, Eric, I really want to echo. That's that, we put a real premium on science, and we should, because it's given us so many things. But even science, there's like the reproducibility problem, right? Science, if you try to take some of the best known experiments and you try to reproduce them, they often aren't able to reproduce the results that they had to begin with. So reproducibility is a conundrum even in the scientific field. So it's there are many things that remain enigmatic to the human mind, right? Which is great. I mean, I think that's kind of a wonderful thing, that there are these mysteries left in life, and it's what makes life worth living and learning and expanding our knowledge and curiosity. I wanted to ask really quickly too, if you would mind, is the mechanism by which precognition occurs, is it safe to say that is a kind of like quantum entanglement with information in the block? Is that kind of how that is? How are you gaining that knowledge?
This is the big open question, because we don't know yet. I have some ideas about how it probably works, but I could well be wrong. I think a growing interpretation of quantum physics is the retrocausal interpretation, or there's actually various versions of it. There's like a lot of different research teams that sort of have a different way of looking at retrocausation. But to boil it down, the idea is that information is not just transmitted sort of forward, causally, the position and momentum and stuff of a particle, it's you think of it as sort of being transmitted from point A to point B, but there's that supposedly random component of it that quantum physics likes to focus on. The idea is that random component isn't random at all. It's what's retro determined from the next thing the particle interacts with, so that there's actually a component of information that is actually retro flowing through the universe. And if that's the case, then certainly life will have long since found a way to capitalize on that, because imagine the survival benefit of being able to know what's around the corner. If you're a bacterium, in the primordial soup, you're going to find a way to leverage that little component of information that gives you some edge, by knowing the future. Not in knowing the future, but being able to be oriented towards your own survival to some degree. So I think that it's going to turn out to have to do with this kind of retro flow of information. And I am very my money. Let's put it this way: my money is on microtubules. So you may know the work of Stuart Hameroff. He and Roger Penrose have a theory of consciousness, which I'm not a fan of, but I think Stuart Hameroff's work on microtubules is really, really important, because these, it is turning out that these things are little quantum computers, and our neurons are full of them. And the best thing is, microtubules are responsible for reshaping the synapses during learning experience. Okay. And this is what happens at an accelerated rate during dreaming, is that we are consolidating our memories. Okay. And so new synaptic connections are being formed, and old ones that don't need it are withering away. And this is all the work of microtubules busily in the synapses. So if the microtubules are quantum computers that are able to pre-spawn to information coming down the pike from the future, and they're reshaping our synapses during learning and during dreaming, especially, that right there, I think you have a beautiful hypothesis for how the mechanism by which we could be getting information from the future and reshaping on a nightly basis our synaptic, our what is it, our connectome, on a nightly basis, based on information not only from the past but from the future as well. So that's my favorite hypothesis for how this works. But we don't know. We really don't know, and it's a fascinating open question.
Yeah.
By percentage, how much would you say that modern science understands about how the brain works and how dreams work as a guess?
Very, very, very little, honestly, and it's no fault of science. I mean, to really drill down on what's happening inside neurons, that's still, I think that's the new frontier in neuroscience. I mean, neuroscientists really understand pretty well that connectome I was talking about, how the brain's billions of cells and trillions of synaptic connections, are connecting and communicating, and different, how different circuits in the brain interact. That is really well understood. What's not understood is the phenomenal complexity of the neurons themselves and the cells themselves, and not just neurons. There's glia, all these other cells going on in the brain that, we're at this threshold, I think, of understanding what happens inside neurons on the micro level. I mean, they're just fantastically complex. I mean, if you thought the brain was complex, then when you drill down on a lower level of scale, it's just as complex, and we don't know nearly as much about that. So I think that there are whole frontiers ahead for neuroscience in terms of understanding, understanding the brain and
That's what
what's
I
going
thought.
on.
It seems like it's back to a topic. Actually, we were on another broadcast right before this one as guests, and it seems like there's a lot more that we don't know than what we do know, and on a
Yeah,
different topic. Bia, do you have
yeah, I
any
think so.
feelings about where your spirit is going to go after you pass? Have you thought about that a lot?
I have, and I think I am. I think because of my religious upbringing, I already have that preconceived like afterlife, like I'm going to live a glorious life, and that's when my life really is going to begin. But then I also, like my husband, he doesn't believe, he believes when you die, you die. That's the end of your story and nothing else happens. So it is, so I do feel that my own religious beliefs, I just feel like that's what's going to happen because that's what it's been preached to me. So
Yeah, and you know that Netflix documentary, the one where you have the child who was aware of the story of the World War II Marine Corps pilot. He knew the name, he knew
Hmm.
all these things, and then when they took him by boat to the location where that Marine Corps pilot crashed in the ocean, he had a visceral reaction to it, and they say that I realize it's within the realm of possibility, but the odds are so great that he could have known who that pilot was, that a very obscure pilot. And then the same thing for that one child who knew who the very, very bit actor was in like the 20s or 30s. And this child knew that actor's name. And they were like, I don't know how they could have known, because even on the internet, there might have been one or two blurbs on the entire internet about this actor. So there is some evidence there. Again, I didn't use the word proof, but there's some very strong evidence that some people lived lives that knew things that they shouldn't have known. So I don't know what you guys do with that, but I want to ask Lovely's question right here, which is, have we altered the negative time? I'm not sure what that means. If anybody can dissect the nature of that question, or if she can restate it if you don't understand it.
I think she's probably asking about the possibility of changing the timeline. This is when people hear about time travel and all these questions that we're addressing right now. One of the first things that comes to mind is the idea of changing the timeline, and the Mandela effect will be brought up in this context and so on. I'm not a fan of that idea. I don't think that's how it works. In a block universe, there's a single timeline, but retrocausation influences events. It's part of the causal backstory of an event is what happens in the future. And it breaks our brain to even think about how this could work. And it's phenomenally hard to wrap our heads around. So we prefer the easier solution, which is, just create a new timeline. Whenever you have someone interacting across time, let's just bounce off in a new timeline, and that solves the problem. But I think that's a cop out, honestly. It goes along with the sort of many worlds interpretation of quantum physics, which I'm not a fan of, and fewer physicists are a fan of that idea. Actually, it's been oversold.
Interesting. You're
So
keeping up with it. Yeah. Almir says timelines can be changed. And Nathan actually has an interesting quote about. He knows this story, so he's going to smile and giggle when I say this. But so back when I was still in active service, and I started wearing barefoot shoes, I found a blog that was written by a guy named Justin, and basically he basically reviewed all kinds of barefoot shoes, from Five Fingers to dozens of different brands of shoes that were on the market when it was still kind of young, and reviewed them and told you whether they're good, whether they're what's good or what's not good about them. And so I said, wow, I can't believe, like, it's so weird that I was, looking at your brother's blog, rather. I guess it was a little over a decade before I met Nathan. And he said you were looking at his blog because eventually you would know me. I don't know. You said something analogous to that, Nathan.
Yeah, there's some sort of a time loop, right? It's
a time loop. Yeah,
example,
sure.
right
Yeah,
there.
that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. We laugh. This happens, and like, you sort of suggest it, first off as ha ha ha, that's a funny possibility. But the more you think about it, the more plausible it seems. And I have like lots of examples of this in my books of these kinds of, these kinds of things bring people together. Honestly, it's like some weird interest you have will lead you to some important relationship later in your life, and it happens. It's I think a super important factor in society.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think we meet people by coincidences either.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I tend to think that
that's
there's no coincidences.
really, wow.
Yeah. I mean,
That-
no, I shouldn't say that, because no, I do give credence to the idea that some things are just coincidental. But I think your default should never be, oh, it's just coincidence. You should always think, what's going on here? What's the deeper causation that's accounting for this experience?
Joe Biffle's asking if you have any firsthand experiences of that. I'm going to just add on to his question, maybe that freaked you out.
That freaked me out.
I'm adding that on. It's not in his question, but I'm guessing that's what he wants to know.
Yeah, not really that freaked me out, but when I
Okay.
started becoming aware of precognitive dreams and started like having them, and it's like it's pretty powerful to have these things. And like, I haven't had any that are about like some public event. That's not true. I'd had a dream on the morning of 9/11 that was precognitive of that event, but I wasn't even aware of it. I sort of like, that's funny, and I just sort of swept it under my mental rug for a decade or more, until I got, became aware of this topic and started like, oh, maybe there's something here. But just uh, thinking of one. One of my favorite example, one of my favorite examples that I always give, and it sounds ridiculously stupid, but I had this dream about, it was just sort of a couple of black and white images that seemed like from some like new wave film from the 60s. And it was like, this sailboat on a lake, and then there was this like a Volkswagen at a intersection in the rain. And it's like, but I woke up and I wrote it down, and I just took a moment to reflect. Oh yeah, these were scenes from a movie I'd seen like years and years ago called Knife in the Water. And it was by Roman Polanski when he was in Poland. Okay, it was a
Mhm.
Polish film, and I'd seen it at a Slavic film festival like decades ago. I was like,
Wow.
oh, so I wrote that down. Okay, so a couple hours later, I'm at my office, and I I I brought an apple for my morning snack, and so I go into the little office kitchen, there was like, I knew that there was a little serrated knife there, and that's what I was going to use to peel my apple. And there was hardly anything in the kitchen, but there was this serrated knife. So I go in there, and what do I see? But the sink has backed up. It's like this, like, it's kind of with like dirty water. It's completely backed up. And what's at the bottom of the sink gleaming under all this water was the knife I was looking for. And it's like, that's like just a beautiful example of how these dreams work. And like if you just go by what the image of the dream is without free associating it, I would have missed that. But I just took a moment, like knife in the water, and then forgot about it. But then I go
Wow.
in and for the first time ever at work, the sink is backed up and the knife I want is at the bottom, gleaming at me from below, like 8 inches of dirty muddy water, and it's like almost like a joke. It's like the universe plays these jokes on you almost, but it often has like a tricksterish feeling. But I think that trickster thing, that trickster archetype, is a result of the fact that we are precognitive creatures and we do not know it. We do not suspect it or know it. And so we go through life, and if we're paying attention, we have these sort of amazing, bizarre experiences where it feels like the universe is kind of like laughing at us or getting us to laugh along with it or whatever. But it's our precognitive engagement with our future, and it can happen not just around big events like deaths and disasters and so on, although those are, it's very common to have, some people like preferentially sort of dream about disasters in the news. But most precognitive dreams will be about something like totally trivial, but it's mind blowing to have these experiences. And like, that made my day, honestly, that was like this is freaking amazing. I sat, I didn't get any work done that day because I was just like thinking, my God, how cool
Yeah.
this is, And so it becomes a big event, even though objectively it's trivial. So I don't know. I mean, I've had a ton of precognitive dreams that have just blown my mind. Yes. But I don't know. I wouldn't know where to start, but just start doing this yourself and you will be mind blown.
I'm gonna try and write him down tonight. So right there, it's pinned to the top of the chat is Eric Wargo's Amazon book collection that you can. It's pinned at the chat, so you can go ahead and click on that. And there it is. How many books have you written? 1, 2, 3, 4,
5.
5 books. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Mhm. Yeah.
5 books right there. And any final questions before we go, Nathan, Bia?
Yeah. What are you working on next, Eric? What's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, I'm sort of been taking a break from writing, which which feels kind of good to just kind of enjoy my weekends and
Well deserved.
and not
Have to
not
write.
not be forcing myself. I mean, I love writing, but it's been nice to just like kind of chill. But I am working on something about Zen, actually. I'm a Zen practitioner for many years, and uh, I often bring Zen into my books, and I think there's kind of a Zen kind of subtext in my books. And in fact, I think that my kind of secret agenda in my books is to kind of help people have sort of a Zen awakening experience, because I think of the block universe and time loops as kind of a koan, really. And because if you really bang your head against this topic long enough, you will have an awakening experience, and I want people to share in that. So I'm going to write a book that's a bit more explicitly about my Zen experiences, and how to sort of treat these topics as kind of spiritual fuel, I guess.
Awesome.
And let me make sure. I think, lovely. I don't know if you had one that I missed. There was. Oh yeah, no, I think we got that one. Okay, that's good. Where else can people find your work? Where do you promote yourself? Spend most of your time?
Yeah, I don't do a very good job of promoting myself, unfortunately, but I'm on Twitter. The Nightshirt is my handle, all one word, the Nightshirt. That's the name of my old blog. I have a website, ericwargo.com, and so you can find out all about me and my books on there. Yeah.
That is awesome. I want to thank you very much for. Well, actually, Cabby goodbyes. It goes in a certain order, so we'll start with Boston Bia. Your goodbye first for Dr. Wargo.
Yes, I thought you were totally like, this is completely such an interesting topic. And thank you for covering. I was actually listening to your YouTube shows. So keep doing the YouTube rounds, because I think this is fascinating. And yeah, best of luck in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a real honor to have you with us, and it's been an incredible conversation, very thought provoking. I think, and I think you would probably echo this. We're living in a very interesting time, right, where the old paradigms seem to be. We're re-examining them. We're transforming kind of our speculations, our presumptions, and moving into a new future. And AI and all these sorts of things
Yes.
taking place at one time. So it's truly a fascinating nexus of incredible events. And I think it's not a coincidence, coming back to that you are pursuing this and bringing this to the forefront, because I think it's incredibly meaningful. And I think people, if they just look at their own life experience, will find that it's there, right? So thank you for sharing that with us, and definitely the best of luck to you in the future.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a delight talking to you all.
Yeah, before I say goodbye to Dr. Wargo, I wanted to say you can find Nathan on a show called Liminal Frames, and Frames is spelled with a PH, Rames. They had a great topic this weekend that Exo and Nathan does it along with Exo Academia and Of Point of Convergence fame, and they basically talked about the place we're in today, the political violence, the school shooting violence that really isn't getting any play at all. They were talking about tragically, senselessly, that the political activist was shot, and then there were 3 students in Denver that were shot. Some people say 10 minutes later. I know it was within the hour. And then previous to that, I think there was a school shooting in Minnesota as well, like a week or so ago, and that isn't getting any coverage, and that's problematic. That we're bringing up only the one that sort of has to do that has a political tilt to it, because everybody sort of bought into that. So Nathan and Exo do a great job breaking that down at the end of their show. So I recommend everybody check out, and especially Eric, because Eric didn't know about this show, but he knows about Exo. So they do an outstanding show, Liminal Frame. So I recommend you subscribe to that. Eric, thank you so much for coming on. You are always welcome to promo anything you have coming up here, or we'll get you on a round table with some other thought-provoking individuals like yourself. All right.
Sounds great. Thank you again.
Thank you. On behalf of Dr. Wargo, Pia, Nathan, Debs, Courtney, and of course, Julie in the chat, this is DJ saying peace out, one love, and we will see you down the road.